Wow. Once again, we're right here. You're listening to Our Voices Online. And the name of the show is Unveiling Truth. And I'm your host, Truth Walker. Come on! I want to let you know that we as a people, we have options. I want to pound that as hard as I possibly can, because you do not have to be in a place where we believe and receive everything that we're taught in school, everything that the news media says. We're going to research this thing and define and affirm and validate the absolute truth. Let me get right to it. Today's show, we're going to talk about the 14th Amendment. And the position that I'm taking solidly is that the 14th Amendment, instead of enhancing the freedoms of the freed slaves, it is the conduit. It is the catalyst. It is the trick source that allows us and causes the masses to volunteer to be a slave. Now you got an option. You can go on with what the mainstream says, or you can test, validate, verify what old Truth Walker has to say. My name's Truth Walker, and you're listening to Unveiling Truth. Let me get to it. We don't have, time's not on our side. I want to say that my source today, well, I wrote a book. The name of the book is The Shocking Truth About So-Called Blacks. And of course, you know, our premise is that the African diaspora is something that didn't happen in the numbers that they claimed. In the vast majority of the Asiatic, the vast majority of the Native Americans of dark skin hue, the vast majority of the so-called blacks were already here. We talked about previously the coup d'etat, the secret government takeover that took place, where they subverted the Moorish or the so-called blacks empire and created a government ran by themselves, moving us out of the place of power. I know that sounds crazy, but we're going to get to it. I can quickly tell you, in 1754, good old Ben Franklin, he set up the United States Service Corporation Company in France. Now, the Service Corporation Company dealt with service contracts and businesses here in this land because there was an agreement with the Sultan of Morocco to utilize his empire, that's the North, Central, and South America, to do business on the land. Now, that's the truth of the matter. Over time, of course, there's slavery, and yes, we took part in enslaving our own, but ultimately, the trick bag was unleashed. When the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, then shortly after the death of Abraham Lincoln, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, let me be clear on that, here comes this 14th Amendment. On another show, we're going to go back and to fill in a lot of that detail. But remember, we're on the 14th Amendment, so here we go. So the 14th Amendment was this is of the Constitution for the United States of America. Many so-called black activists will tell you that the 14th Amendment was written for so-called black people to have equal protection under the law. I used to explain it as it being a law put in place to stem the tide of ridiculously abominable treatment of the emancipated slave. Let me give you an example. let's say a recently freed slave, give it around 1867, 2 years after the end of the Civil War, they purchased goods that were priced at, say, 50 cents. And they purchased these goods from a store, and they used a lawful dollar bill that's backed by gold, $10 bill to pay this 50-cent pay. Instead of that European store owner giving the so-called black, the freed slave, his change of $9.50, he could keep the money for his own, use it how he sees fit, simply by saying, hey, the copper-colored person must have stolen the money because his eyes look shifty. Or the so-called black person would have been literally robbed with no legal course or remedy to get what was rightfully his. So the 14th Amendment comes along and lets the store owner know that the law allows the copper-colored person, the so-called black individual, it allows them equal protection under the law. The same as the European patron. Wow. Knowing what I know about how, to have respect for the law, turns out that nobody respected that law. The respect for the law was virtually zero. Mostly ignored it when it came to the copper-colored people. I feel foolish taking the time to even try to explain what many erroneously thought the 14th Amendment was supposed to do. I'm thinking of the castration and the hanging of the so-called black men with wives and children, and the raping of our women, and the random beatings of these copper-colored people, all going unpunished. And this took place after slavery was over. Now, I didn't want to get into this thing, to talk about the things that sicken me. That's a distraction. I can't take it anyway. So let me just get to telling you about this 14th Amendment and what it actually is. In short, the 14th Amendment. Now, I'm going to make my statement and then I'm going to have to prove it out. But here we go. The 14th Amendment is a de facto second constitution created as a straw man to re-enslave and help steal the birthright of the largest unclaimed inheritance in the history of the world from any copper-colored former slave and his descendants residing here on Turtle Island, better known as America, Amexem, old Amexem. That answer to the name of or accepts anybody that answers to the name of or accepts the fact that they are Negro, black, or colored. So let me see if I can put it this way. This thing is set up, that's the 14th Amendment, such that when you identify yourself as Negro, black, colored, African American, minority, you name it, that you lose your rights, lose your unalienable, unalienable rights that are afforded to every living sentient being. So first, let me explain this straw man. I know you heard the term. The straw man, just think fake out. If you were presenting a straw man rebuttal on an argument, say you're making an argument and you want to give a straw man a rebuttal. Somebody's arguing and you're going to give a straw man. You would say something in a way that creates an illusion of having dealt with the other side's question or position on the matter at hand, moving the focus away from the core argument and onto a branch or a fragment of the main argument. Now listen, if government legislation, in this government legislation, This diversion is usually done by focusing on a segment of the argument that garners at times and perpetuates strong emotional ties. Now, in the case of the 14th Amendment, this would be done in a way where you would covertly get your agenda addressed by changing the focus or wording of the amendment, such that it distracts attention away from the core or true issue, under the guise of you having successfully refuted your opponent's side of the argument and addressed his concerns with the dispute at hand. In effect, you would have clandestinely replaced the core argument or issue with a false argument and possibly a proposed solution. For example, the congressional argument. Now I'm going to give you the argument. See, at the end, the 13th Amendment came into play. We'll talk about the 13th Amendment later. They're not just 2 sections, they're 20. We'll get to it. But here's the congressional argument. The problem is, look, the civil rights movement is over. The civil rights movement. The Civil War is over. The North won. There was an agreement in place not only to free the slaves, but to give them back what's rightfully theirs: territory, money, education of truth, because they know that they've been enslaved in their mind. That's in writing, by the way. And that's spelled out at some depth in the 13th Amendment, the true 13th Amendment. But there was a huge argument because the people in power said, no, we cannot give it back to them. The land that's rightfully theirs, the agreement of the Constitution, where they are supposed to be the supreme law of the land. Oh my. Abraham Lincoln said, no, we got to do right. They killed him. So here's the argument. They said, how do we maintain power and go about honoring the treaty with Morocco and her subjects and give back the inheritance of these Moroccan copper-colored people that we enslaved? An inheritance that includes their land, their culture, their religion, etc. How much money do we give them back to help launch their rightful, honorable standing in society? And how do we give them access to formal education where slavery in this country did not even allow them to read? A formal education that also includes enough accurate information to help with the undoing of the mental prison that our savage slavery and peonage put them in. That was the true argument. That's what they were trying to figure out. Old Uncle Abe had a plan. They didn't like his plan. They killed him. So here's the straw man to that true argument that they're trying to figure out. Here's the fake out move. Here's the straw man now. This is the fake out. We need to protect the Moroccan subjects as they assimilate back into the society under the law. We must give them equal protection. We can give them the opportunity to reap some of the benefits of citizenship that we control, of course, and let them enjoy some of the virtues of the new America. We will address how, but we need to make sure we don't box ourselves in with this amendment. So we have to build in some flexibility. Oh, that's the straw man. They were supposed to give us land, money, get us back to our culture, true education, because they had enslaved not only our bodies, but our minds, and they knew that. So first and foremost, the writers of the 14th Amendment needed a plausible deniability. A war or any aggression or dissatisfaction from Morocco, who were complicit with their subjects being temporarily enslaved, would be a disaster. So they got a problem on their hands, because this whole enslaving the Moroccan subjects is over. The time limit is up. They need something to address the status of the Moroccan subjects. And they need a document to not only redefine who a citizen was, they needed flexibility with how this amendment could be used in adjudication and applied to the related issues that brought about need for this change in law. Now, having said that, let's take a look at Section 1 and Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. Remember what this 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. It was a fake out move. Here it is. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment reads as follows. Now, you got to keep in mind that these Moroccan subjects, your ancestors, this is a whole regal thing. This country that we're in, this landmass called America, we are under occupation. That's what's up. So here's what the first Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says. It reads like this. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, not subject to foreign powers, Section 1992 of U.S. Congress, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the states where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within jurisdiction the equal protection under the laws. That last line is just a fake out. They restated rules, guidelines that are already enforced by the Constitution. You know, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. All of that information that's being restated in the 14th Amendment is already stated in the Constitution. Why are they restating it in this amendment? Because they are creating a change. Now, Section 5, I'll read this quickly. Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. That means if we messed up, we got the power to flip it any way we see necessary. This is a game of high stakes. They are creating a situation where you, me, us are give up our allodial liberty to be a part of a corporation. Stay with me. Now, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says that all people born in the United States are United States citizens. And then they say, except those who are not subject to foreign powers. Now, you stop right there. Who's not subject to foreign powers? Are you saying that the people that are gathered together calling themselves the United States are foreign powers? Could that be referring to the sovereign Moors of the land of El Morocco? The land you call America, being subjects of the Sultan of Morocco? All people born in the United States are United States citizens except those who are not subject to foreign powers. Wow. Just open your eyes. It's right there in your face. I say we just have to read more. Section 5 authorizes the Congress to enforce the 14th Amendment by appropriate legislation. This statement gave the Congress immense power to modify as necessary the straw man. Let's consider a few definitions here. Let's talk about naturalization. It means to admit a foreigner to the citizenship of a country. While that's naturalization. Naturaliz, natural. while nationalized is something totally different. When you nationalize, you recognize who you belong to and what you are. So if the copper-colored person nationalizes, he realizes he shakes out of his sleep. If the so-called black, the so-called Negro, when he nationalizes, he says, I can't, I'm not a member of this corporation. I was already here. I'm claiming rights and bloodline to the people of the land. So when you come from Germany and you say, I want to be a United States citizen, you are naturalizing. But nationalizing is nation. Oh, man. And I can tell you that black, Negro, colored, African American, minority, Latino, Hispanic is not nation. But that's another story. Actually, it is the story. So so the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was ratified and made official in 1868, along with the other Reconstruction Amendments. The 13th supposedly freed the slaves forever, and the 14th temporarily gave so-called black men the right to vote. I hate giving that microwave answer, but I'm short on time. So the French fry synopsis as titles, but I want to stay focused on the 14th Amendment. Right after I share a few thoughts and nuggets on the 13th Amendment, let me say this. The 13th Amendment, the one that freed the slaves, the 13th Amendment legally ended slavery, except when someone was in prison. That section reads like this, the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, wherefore the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So there you have it right there, that slavery still is alive and well in law in one way, and I'm talking about involuntary slavery, simply by if when you're in prison. So all the rules of slavery count if you're in prison according to the 13th Amendment. Now, the 13th Amendment has 20 sections. No, I'm not crazy. The 13th Amendment has 20 sections. I know what they teach you in school, but this is unveiling truth. You're listening to Our Voices Online. And the name of the show is Unveiling Truth. My name's Truth Walker. Listen to the truth about the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment has 20 sections, and that 13th Amendment was passed by both houses of Congress and signed by Abraham Lincoln, the last official president of the Republic. This took place on February 1st, 1865. This amendment provided compensation for the slave and the slaveholder, to include official provisions for land and the nationalization of the slave, because they were already here. You can't nationalize if you weren't already here. After Abraham Lincoln's assassination, this agreed upon signed organic 13th Amendment, according to the government hierarchy, somehow never made it to the table for ratification, but that's not true. And of course, I don't agree with that. Something more sinister happened. I believe misprision of a plan to carry out hegemony brought about by a covert coup d'etat. Remember, they had a secret government takeover. 1861, when Congress adjourned sine die, that's end of day, and restarted this whole new de facto government, not the Republic of America that the Constitution is founded on. Great day in the morning. Now, this resulted in the 13th Amendment change resulted in the true amendment not being presented to the public. To top it off, they only print government-issued constitutional booklets to include Sections 1 and Section 2 of the 13th Amendment, and they only teach that portion in all public schools and parochial schools, most colleges and universities. However, there are 20 sections, and it's Section 12 of the true 13th Amendment that I want to call your attention to. Hang on to your seats, because the 13th Amendment, which is law, the Amendment Section 12 reads as follows. The traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death, and the forfeiture of all the rights and properties of persons engaged therein, and the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. You can't even be a citizen in law. Not for real. That's right. You heard me correctly. The amendment reads, Africans shall not be citizens. Is that because sovereigns can't be citizens? Let's investigate. First, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, exactly as it is written. Stay with me because I'm coming to a close. This sickens me. Here's Section 1, 14th Amendment. 14th, back to 14th. Stay with me. All persons born or naturalized in the United States. Now remember, if you're sovereign, if you've already been here, you can't be naturalized. You are nationalized. As a nation, right? Let me start again. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection under the laws. Remember, a true sovereign can't be a citizen. When you hear or read this thing sovereign, think self-governing, think self-ruling with full autonomy, like a king or queen, or at least equated to being a member of the royal family, because that's what you are. When most people look at Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, they quickly conclude that everyone born or naturalized in the United States and under the jurisdiction will be a United States citizen. But that's not true. Look at it this way. Section 1, one more time, of the 14th Amendment breaks down this way. Basically, it says if you are born here in the U.S., you receive citizenship at the state and federal level only if you are not subject to foreign powers. The copper-colored descendants of Moroccan subjects born in America cannot receive citizen benefits unless they identify themselves as Negro, nigger, black, colored, minority, African American, disenfranchised, Latino, Hispanic, and with that, by law, you volunteer to be enslaved. What? True. You volunteer to be enslaved. It means that states cannot prevent freed slaves from obtaining state citizenship and thus federal citizenship, and with federal citizenship being made primary. Let me tell you something. When you volunteer to be this citizen, your birth certificate, your social security number, your marriage license, all sold on an open stock market as T-bonds. And man, they live off your virtues. Oh my. All I want to say is that the 14th Amendment is a big fake out move. First and foremost, fundamentally, this is a basic concept. If ever a government you have to ask for your rights, meaning the government has to give you rights, something's wrong. Something's nefarious. Something's incredibly out of order. Because you are born with your human being, as a being, you're born with your rights. Inalienable rights. It's natural law. If you gotta beg for your rights, something is wrong. You're born. The government doesn't give you rights. You want to study the 14th Amendment. And under the guise of the 14th Amendment, they are paying back the debt, the national debt. National debt. You were already here. The copper-colored people, the so-called black, the so-called Negro, you were already here. So guess who you are? You are the national. Let me sum it up this way. The 14th Amendment, it creates a new class of citizenship. This is what it did. It created a new class of citizenship. The United States citizen. That's the new class of citizenship that the 14th Amendment created. Not what the Declaration of Independence created. This is a new class of citizenship. Now, this citizenship applies only to persons subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government. All jurisdictions implies superiority of power. A person is always an artificial corporate entity with its name spelled in all caps. You are presumed to be a U.S. citizen unless and until you prove otherwise. Remember, check your mail. If it's coming to you as a U.S. citizen, if it's coming to you as a corporate person, if it's coming to you as something which is not real, don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what the book says. An artificial person is created and devised by human laws for the purposes of society and government and distinguished from natural persons. Distinguished from natural persons. Well, what's an artificial person? A corporation. An artificial person or legal entity created by or under the authority of laws of the state or nation. That's what a corporation is. That's what you are as a U.S. citizen. And the proof of that is when your mail comes in and it's in all capital letters. They have moved you out of the human family and made you a corporation subject to the laws and the jurisdiction thereof. Man, what a trick bag. That's the 14th Amendment. As a corporate entity, you cannot connect to your bloodline. What do you mean? You can't claim your inheritance. If you are saying that you're sovereign and you were already here, the trick is for them to take you out of that status by making you a corporate entity, a non-person. You have to say that and know who you are and be in a position to say that I am Aboriginal. I'm a Native American. Truly. I'm a Moor. This land is the land from my ancestors, and I am 100% descendable. Come on now. Let me tell y'all something. Man, it's a whole story on the 14th Amendment. And it's a whole lot more information. But I don't want to keep you long. Let me just tell you. There's a truth to be told. And you need to put on your thinking cap. Because, baby, we in a trick bag like you can't imagine. But what you have at your disposal is you have options. You have choices to look, trust, but verify, putting 10 times more emphasis on verification than you do trust. You're listening to Our Voices Online. I tried to give a synopsis of the 14th Amendment. Explain that the 13th Amendment has really 20 sections. You got to ask for the 13th Amendment with 20 sections online, and she'll come up and dance right in your face. Go to section 12. It says the copper-colored people, the Asiatic people, the so-called black, cannot be citizens. That law still stands today, hidden away. But Our Voices Online is going to unveil truth. I'm your host, Truth Walker. Peace.